So this is a terrific group of people who are going to talk about sort of the business perspective on all this. You know, the challenges, the need, what the operating stresses are, and you know, try to get our hand on, you know, what are the opportunities for the business community to help participate in these solutions. So we've got a excuse me, a terrific panel. Aspen Crud. So Kris Mattera is the executive director of the Basalt Chamber of Commerce, but her tentacles spread far and wide in the valley, and she's really knowledgeable about small business formations and operations. Carolyn Tucker is the business coordinator for the Colorado Workforce Center. Bill White is the regional president for Alpine Bank of Colorado. We're hoping he's going to be really good and very optimistic because we all have our money stashed away with him. And Phillip Jeffreys has been working long and hard at delivering housing for the Aspen Skiing Company and is the Director of Housing Development for ASC. So we're going to just do kind of some introductory remarks from each one of these excellent people. So Kris, you're first up, so let us know what you think from Basalt Chamber.
I enjoy that I have tentacles now. And no pressure, I get to represent all of the chambers in the valley, and there are many of us, and we all work together, and we recognize that this is a huge challenge. And I mean, first and foremost, if you talk to anyone in this valley, this is not a new problem. I came to this valley in October 2016. Prior to that, I was trying to interview for a job here in the valley. And in the email after my first phone interview, it was, hey, housing's tough. You might want to look at that. And that's my origin story was I ended up finding housing in 2016, moved here, didn't get the job, ski bummed, and then ended up in this position. So what we're seeing now is just an intensification. And is my audio going in and out, or is that just me?
No, is it okay?
I'm good? Okay. And as you've heard from many of our speakers already this morning, it's an issue with recruiting, retention, and ultimately it's going to be the expansion of the businesses themselves. So what you're seeing is, and what we're hearing from our employers, is that people are going through the interview process and they don't even get to sometimes the job offer part. They start looking at housing like I did in 2016, and then it's not realistic. They pull themselves out of it, they ghost the employer, and they don't make it through the process, and that's a waste of both the applicant's time and, more importantly, the company's time trying to find that right fit. We're having employers who are looking at wanting to expand their business, but they don't have the workforce to do it. So ultimately, this issue with housing is becoming an issue of growing the local economy, having those businesses do what they want to do, take on the projects they want because they can't expand their bandwidth. As some of the people have mentioned, there's the migration issue with the workforce. Looking at the regional housing study from 2017, and these are 2015 numbers, and I think Basalt was a really good example for this. 85% of the workforce in Basalt is commuting in, 90% is commuting out. And you wonder what's going on with the traffic on 82, that's part of the problem. No one's able to live and work in the same location. What we're also seeing is a shift, and I'd like to see the updated numbers now for commute patterns, is a lot of our businesses are actually moving towards the Mid-Valley. So hopefully that's some opportunity where people aren't commuting up to Aspen as frequently. We're seeing a lot of major employers, frankly, because of the availability in the Mid-Valley, like Aspen Skiing Company, they're coming into Basalt and basing their businesses there because of kind of this pain factor of finding the housing and the long commutes. As other speakers have mentioned, this is a regional issue. It cannot be addressed on the municipality level or even at the county level. I think if we learned anything during COVID is we can all work together. That's a big silver lining, but we need to. There's these unintended consequences when we only look at, say, an APTRA program and you're focused on Pickens County. The majority of Basalt's businesses are based in the Eagle County portion and not much in Pickens County itself. So, for example, you take the Chamber's office, you take Midland Avenue, all of those businesses are located in Eagle County. You have no shot, if you're an employee there, to have access to APTRA housing unless you happen. Well, actually, you just can't. There's no access. So we're in a position now where your ability to find a job and where that job happens to be located, where that office is, and where you can happen to afford to rent is ultimately dictating your future housing options. When I looked at the housing lottery, I think it must have been for Garfield County in 18 probably, I was straight up told not to apply to a unit because I would have been a tier 2 because I couldn't afford to live in Carbondale proper. I was in an unincorporated Garfield County, and it wasn't even worth a shot to put my name in the hat. So you're having a bunch of employees who are trying to contribute to the local economy, and they don't even have options available to them for different housing. Larger companies, again, the previous panel, Aspen Skiing Company as well, they can make these bold moves and have housing options available. I look at our chamber membership, and we are predominantly sole proprietor to 5-person businesses. What can a 5-person business do in terms of getting housing? We're seeing kind of those, what I would call medium, but let's be honest, we're all under 500 employees except for certain people. We're all micro businesses in our area. What can they do if you have 20 to 40 employees? A lot of them are looking at, can I buy a unit? Can I work with someone to buy a unit? Who else has housing available? We have Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers asking who can house our seasonal employees just so we can help do the trail work for the trails we love so much. So that's impacting your overall quality of life. The fact that tying housing to your employer is a challenge. If you want to change or move up in a job, well, that becomes an issue too. I have lots of notes. My favorite comment from the state demographer is, housing is where a job sleeps at night. We need to think about that. That's where these people are. But more importantly, affordable, attainable housing is where a local job sleeps at night. You know, there's plenty of people in this community who may not necessarily be working for a local employer, and that's another challenge we're starting to see, especially in the last few years, and I know we'll have some comments on that from my fellow panelists. So obviously this is a challenge. I can go on and on about this, but the other point I want to make is I'm one of the faces of affordable housing. I'm incredibly lucky that I won a lottery in December 21 and was able to purchase a unit in Carbondale. If it wasn't for that, we were seriously looking if the chamber could even go about buying a unit or trying to subsidize a unit so I could stay here. So it's not just your frontline workers, it's other people who contribute to this community and make it what it is. And if we can't establish roots, what kind of community are we going to have?
Thanks for that summary. Yeah, it reminds me, I think I heard the comment that winning one of these lotteries now is like 5 degrees separation from getting struck by lightning. You know, so that's a pretty good indication we need to work on it. Carolyn, your thoughts?
Boy, all the past panels and now Kris has taken all of my thunder, so I got nothing. So, actually, I'm with the Workforce Center, the Department of Labor and Employment, and so I have a larger picture. I actually work in 5 different counties, from Garfield County all the way over to Summit and Lake and Pitkin up here. And my job is to support businesses, whatever that means. Is that education? Is that recruiting and retention? And what we're seeing in the workforce is, and with our employers, is exactly what everyone's talking about. It's hard to find people. It's hard to find skilled people. It's hard to keep them. And up on the slide, maybe next one. That's who I am. Okay. My demographic. Okay, so really this is what's going on in our region and also around the state. We are seeing increased retirements. No offense, but look around the room and there's a lot of us baby boomers out here. So just saying, we're all looking to step away from that workforce. And we usually, at the apex of our careers, have purchased a home. And it was commented earlier, the people that are moving away and taking advantage of that equity are moving to Florida, or hopping into a van, or doing whatever. That's a high-priced housing unit that no one else can really get to as beginning. We're seeing decreased birth rates. So we've got lots of people stepping away at the one end, and we have less people coming in on the front end. We're seeing an aging workforce. And those people are stepping away, and they want to stay and age in place. Glenwood, Pitkin County, Eagle County is a wonderful place to live. They're going to stay, and they're going to demand services such as Aspen Valley Hospital and RAFTA and Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers. All of these things are going to demand all these different services. The population growth is going to continue into Colorado, but it's going to slow. So all of that stuff that happened in the 80s and 90s where we had a huge influx of us looking to be the ski bums, that's going to slow, and that growth is going to be concentrated on the Front Range. And then Colorado is no longer as competitive as it used to be. We've talked about cost of living. We've talked about how hard it is. We've talked about the cost of living here. Iowa, Nebraska, New Hampshire, everyone has a cost of living that's less than ours, and actually some of those states have some incentives to attract a workforce. So those are kind of the overall trends going on. Specifically, the stressors on our workforce, and I think this is, kind of reflected in the workforce across the state as nation, is those housing prices. Let's not forget childcare. Let's not forget that housing is squeezing our paychecks. Childcare, affordability, and accessibility is squeezing that paycheck. Transportation, job choices. Do we have livable wage and career transition opportunities in the Valley? Skills deficit. All of those people that are retiring are taking those skills with them. We have to support skills training to get that next level up to be leaders in our community. Inflation, of course, and then the Great Reckoning, which came after the pandemic. And again, one of those things is, hey, life is short. This pandemic scared the bejesus out of us. Now is the time I'm going to move to the mountains. Now is the time I am going to pull the trigger on something I've always wanted to do, and we're seeing that. Next slide. Okay, so this is really, this is our what we call a talent deficit, and you can see it's real simple. In the left side of the graph is when we had low unemployment. So this is 2019 into January 2020. We had a talent deficit. We were under 3.0, almost 2.5% unemployment. So we were struggling before the pandemic. You see the big spike of unemployment, and then now it's come back down to where we have less people to do more work. We have more job openings than we have people, and that housing only exacerbates it. If we're going to bring in people to do these jobs, we need to solve these housing issues and problems. And I think that's it for me, because I was only given 2.
So, Bill, the banks.
Thank you, Bill. I hope everyone can hear me. I didn't know this was going to be like Squirm Night.
Yeah, it is. It's like
Okay,
that. Yeah.
thank you so much. I'm here representing Alpine Bank. We have about 800 employees approximately across the eastern and western slopes. My focus has been and will continue to be the Roaring Fork Valley, specifically the Upper Roaring Fork. I got here in 1995, and I shared a 3-bedroom with 5 other folks, and I was thankful and lucky that I actually had that type of housing. It started at the bank in 1998, and really I've watched our housing needs grow from an affordable standpoint, and the options shrink over 20 plus years. So I don't feel like this is a new problem that this valley is taking a look at. And from all the comments that everybody said before, I think I agree with Carolyn that I can talk about attraction and retention and all those issues, and we're all feeling the same thing. Unfortunately, from the people that I've heard right now, I almost feel lucky that only up in this valley, we have about 30 to 40 employees in the Upper Roaring Fork, compared to some of the real challenges that happen with those larger organizations. So when we look to attract people, housing is obviously a big deal. Retention is obviously one of the main things when somebody gets up here and the cost of living really starts to hit home, and to see what cost that is. We also look at employees because their lifestyles change. They want to start families, they want to expand, and so there's that movement down valley. At least that's how it used to be. Now with down valley pricing being so expensive, that's becoming less and less of an option. We're seeing employees that come to the bank have a 1 to 3 year track record at this point in time, and that does not get them into the affordable housing lottery at that point in time. That also includes sort of a move down to even as far as Glenwood and Newcastle, which in turn causes morale to suffer both for those employees and for the employees that I have in the bank. We're a customer service business. With COVID, we were able to do a lot of remote work, but that's not our model. We need to be involved in the community. We need to have what I like to call boots on the ground and people that are in the locations, answering questions, supporting all of our different enterprises in the areas and companies and corporations that we serve. So having housing available at an affordable level near the places that people work is so essential. As I mentioned before, what the bank has done, we've been fairly proactive as well as we can do it. Back in 1999, we purchased some units in the Euler, and that was a public-private partnership, which really worked well. We purchased 4 units back then. We purchased another group of units in the Christiana in the mid-2000s, and so we had 6 units that we actually used. We most recently purchased a free market unit. And that free market unit, I think I've heard from a lot of other private enterprises that they have really been forced to sort of solve their own problem and say, we're going to buy a unit at market rents where we have to do it at market prices, and we are going to subsidize it ourselves because we want to keep people in these communities. So I commend the private sector for working on that, but I think we all can agree that the partnership between public and private and philanthropic organizations is the best way to attack this problem and to solve it on a valley-wide scope and scale. I guess I'll put it in perspective and close with this. With Aspen, because it really is what I know, our bank in the Airport Business Center, we have 21 employees. Of those 21 employees, 6 of them are obviously in the units that we hold, that the bank subsidizes the rent for. 10 other folks have utilized APSHA and are able to use subsidized housing. 2 folks live with their parents. God, I'm getting old. They're still living with their parents on that side. And we have 3 other people that do have free market housing, and that's not in the area. That's down Valley and Basalt and as far as Carbondale. So you look at those numbers, and I think to myself, my goodness, what would my staff look like if we did not have affordable subsidized housing, if the bank and the private sector did not take steps to memorialize these things and keep people in our community? We would not have the staff we were today, and it would really be a serious challenge to us being able to maintain the level of service and to serve our community. So we are very thankful for being able to partner with APSHA for affordable housing. With Habitat, we were lucky enough to do Basalt Vista, which I think was a tremendous success. And we look forward to continuing to work on Wapiti Way down in Rifle, and really any other opportunities that we can have, we're open for it. So that's what I've got, Bill.
Thanks, Bill. Excellent. Next up is Phillip Jeffreys. So I've known Phillip for a very long time. I can assure you he is a long-suffering, and he's the guy that is in the trenches delivering housing. So you've seen tiny houses, you've seen the hub, you've seen all these affordable housing projects Aspen Skiing Company has undertaken in the valley. And so Phillip's on the chisel point of all that, and be really good to hear your take on your challenges and where we go.
I feel like I want to switch to the afternoon session. This is getting super depressing. Anyway, since I was put on the challenge portion of this event, I'll say that, obviously the threat to our business of the loss of beds from second homes and STRs and Zoomers is a huge threat. It's certainly not new, but what has changed is kind of the depth of the problem. As recently as 5 years ago, I'd say that the issue of affordability basically radiated from almost this spot in Aspen. Yeah. It radiated from here. Today, obviously, with remote work, we have high-income individuals running their businesses from their little slice of paradise, and that could be up Missouri Heights, up 4 Mile, the Frying Pan, the nooks and crannies that used to house our employees and that house the majority of SKICO employees are gone. The result is huge. We had, just before the ski season, a list last year of 50 plus individuals who had considered themselves as having stable housing find themselves on the street. And that was as a result of their rents either just doubling or their landlords just deciding that, hey, I'm going to flip out of this thing. So, it's impacted a new tier of folks. We have surveyed our employees over and over again. It's a huge deal. In the past, historically, the Aspen Skiing Company focused its efforts on the first and second year employee. Obviously, now that the challenge has grown, our focus has adjusted. We're now looking at transitional housing that is, years 3 through 5. It was pre-pandemic. Now I'm at 7 years of housing assistance is kind of the number. So that our need as a business has evolved. One thing I want to be clear about is our efforts on the housing front, and it, often get times folks like, gosh, look at that enormous building. This isn't about growing our business. Our housing isn't focused on growing the skiing company. It's really focused on trying to keep our business operational, stay in business. And so looking at our solutions, we obviously go out and, as Dan and Jeff have said, if we have to go solve our own problems. And I'm proud of the work that we've done over the years to do so. We have built buildings like the Hub, which is a 50,000 square foot, 43 unit, 150 bedroom, all electric, adjacent to transit building in Willits. But we also work on non-development solutions. Our Tenants for Term program, which we had, I believe, 10 years ago, but we brought back last year, that yielded us over 100 beds this year. That is incredibly meaningful. And then we obviously work on the demand side. We've brought in automated fryers. We are advocating, ironically, for remote work in some cases. And so, we are trying to keep our head count to the minimum. But, as we know, we do have to have some folks physically present on the mountain. So I'd love to talk more about solutions, but that's a start for now. And happy to be here.
Well, let me hypothesize here and fire a question and get your take on this. So you are starting a new business. You got a business formation. You need 50 staffers, and so these guys are coming to the Roaring Fork Valley, and you are hiring up. Of 50, and you're going to pay 130% AMI as starting salaries. What percentage of your new employees can find their way in the housing market as it currently exists? And how many will require assistance of some sort or another? So, Kris, why don't you take a first pass at that? And,
I think it's definitely a challenge. I mean, we look at it and just looking around for rents, for example, first, last, and security. I pulled some numbers from Facebook Marketplace, the new Roaring Fork Rentals and Roommates. We're looking at $1,800 for a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom in Elgibel, $2,000 for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath in Soapers Village, $2,500 a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom in Basalt, $5,000 for a 3-bedroom in Carbondale. Okay, first, last, and security. Okay, that's $15,000. I mean, when you start rivaling what would have been a down payment, most people don't have that, and you're looking at a challenge where the people who could possibly do that are coming from outside, either have equity from a house they sold, or were coming from previously a much higher 6-figure job. You look at locals in the valley to try to put that money down, it's significant. And I think you're seeing it, in Apchit, they talked about 50 people going after those per every single one of those 18 units. The most recent Carbondale lottery had 100 people apply. That should tell you where we're at. The demand is huge. Before the pandemic, you were looking at maybe 25 to 30 people applying for deed-restricted housing. It's significant. So I think in terms of finding them, it's tough. You're either pulling from an existing employer if you're hiring from here in the valley, or you're just trying to find a place where that employee can even come in, and 50 is a huge number. You know, when we're struggling just to see if we can get the 1 or 2 employees to help just grow the business or replace somebody who may have retired.
Yeah. Carolyn?
Happened. We had a REI came into Glenwood last year, and before they started, I made contact with them, and we talked a lot about wages. We talked a lot about the workforce in the whole region, and corporate had given them an hourly wage that was far below what we. What the going rate was for a retail person in Garfield County. So we worked with those folks and actually got them to up their wages on that. And then the strategy was, let's go after some students and some college students, because they're living in the basement still, or they're in the dorms and they need a part-time job. That's the strategy that we're seeing. I mean, I almost, when I hear 50 people coming in from out of town, I just go, oh, yeah, talk about depressing, that Phillip was talking about. There's nothing we can do. And so we're looking at creatively talking to businesses and saying, let's grow your own. Let's look at those people that can step into those leadership positions, because they are here. And we can take some of the youngsters coming up and grow them and start them off. But right now, we can't get a middle manager in here for the cost of housing and the salary.
The other challenge you're seeing is when we talk about AMI, the difference between Pickens County AMI and Garfield County AMI is a full salary difference. So when we throw these numbers, we need, I think, to talk about real numbers and not just a percentage or 120 or 130, because 130% AMI in Aspen and what that is in Garfield County are 2 very different numbers, and the access to housing you're going to have is very different. Yeah. And it's just, I think we need to talk about the reality and what the figures are and what 30% housing is going to mean with, you know, $100,000 salary, and how far that can or cannot go.
Kind of sobering, the hotel, accommodation and food service, it's a category of jobs. In Pickens County, the average salary is $55,000 for our hoteliers and our restaurant folk. Now, I'm sure that obviously varies a lot. In Garfield County, it's $35,000. So how is someone going to find a house that is $400,000 on a $35,000 salary? That's where we're at. Those are real numbers, and that's the real struggle that our workforce is facing right now.
Bill, can you?
Bank
employees make much more. Right?
Yeah, yes, they do. I think that the points that are already made by Carolyn and seeing that we actually have moved, we're basically functioning at 75% of full staffing levels right now, and we're not even in the upper Roaring Fork a 50-person employer. So we have our own struggles, and we are actually using that sort of college kid in the basement kind of a thing that's going on. But that's not a sustainable model. That doesn't help us grow people, motivate, cultivate, retain, all the things, all the buzzwords. It just doesn't help. It plugs a hole in the dam, let's just say. So really it is looking at it and saying, what do we do to make it attractive here? And I think a really good first step, Kris, is that living wage, not just using these percentages, putting it into true numbers, saying what it costs for someone to come up with a down payment, what it costs for gas, what it costs mentally for the commute when you have a snowstorm. There's just so many variables that go into this, and I would echo the comments that I have not seen new businesses coming in that say we want to hire and employ 50 employees and house them here in Pickens County, Garfield, or the Roaring Fork Valley as a whole. And we need those. So,
Phillip, how many of these guys are going to go find an apartment somewhere?
I was joking. I was like, that sounds terrible to house 50 people. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's us every year. And the reason that is, I mean, we have 600 people that are over 60 that work for us. And so every year, just the retention and the retirement issue is at least 50. And every one of those folks is exactly what we described earlier. They're not moving into the unit that those longtime employees have held. So it's a nightmare, quite honestly. And they all need assistance.
Great. We are arriving at a moment we have to welcome our next panel. I would just like to maybe thank everybody. Thank you guys for wonderful participation.